and hit record. Okay, welcome. It is Saturday, December 3rd, first Saturday of December. And I am Nancy Moore. I have been coming to Erace since June of 2007. Eracism is the slogan of the group Erace, which was formed in New Orleans in the summer of 1993. We seek ways through person-to-person communication to show that we are committed to treating fellow human beings of all colors with love and respect. Join us. Okay, we'll read the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that what we know as the United States is the traditional territory of indigenous peoples, and that there are many more nations and tribes that could be named. Members of our group today are on the lands of the Tonkawan, Lipan, Apache, and Comanche in Austin, the Chitimacha and Choctaw in New Orleans, the Creeks and Cherokees in Atlanta, the Lenape and Piscataway in Maryland, the Wampanoag and Nipmuc peoples in Boston, and the Cahuilla and Mojave in Riverside County, California. We thank their ancestors for being stewards of these lands through generations. And part of it is missing. Oh, anyway.
Yeah.
It's not there. So we move on. Okay, we're going to start off by having everyone introduce themselves. And then I'll move on to the format of the meeting. Okay, Marion.
Hello again, everyone. I'm Marion Lagarde here in New Orleans. I've been participating in the Erace discussions since June of 1993.
Okay, thank you.
It's good to see everybody.
Marva.
Good morning. My name was Marva. I've been participating Erace discussion post Katrina, and glad to be here this morning.
Thank you. Phyllis.
Good morning, I'm Phyllis. I'm in New Orleans and I've been attending Erace since summer of 2008.
Thank you. Beatrice.
Hi, good morning. I'm Beatrice Souble here in East Point, Georgia. Delighted to have been able to vote Saturday for Raphael Wagner. He had to sue to get Saturday, but I was there, baby, with all the million, they have a million voting. Good morning, everybody. Been in the race since 93, 94 when I was in New Orleans. Yay.
Stanton.
Good morning. Good to see everybody again. I had some really nasty respiratory infection that would not let go for over 3 weeks, but I'm feeling substantially better and good to see everybody. And I miss the group, so good to be back. Thanks.
Well, thank you. We're glad you're back.
Thank you.
Teresa.
I'm Teresa. I've been attending this year since I want to say August. And shout out to you Georgians for showing up. Just I want to say that when I heard you came out in record numbers the first day and then top that the second day, I was like, hallelujah. When it is announced, the results in the favor that I want it to be, just know I will be day drinking. So
Great, thank you. Jean?
I'm Jean Walker. I'm in Silver Spring, Maryland. And I've been attending for about a year. And I echo Teresa's comments. We're looking forward to wonderfully favorable results. The best man win.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Look forward
Thank
to
you,
discussion.
Jean.
Okay.
Pedro.
Hey, good morning, and good to hear you're feeling better, Stanton. That must have been a scary little venture you had. So welcome back. I've been coming to these meetings not long enough, about 3 years or so, 2 to 3 years, and really appreciate the discussion and the insights that are provided. So thank you.
Thank you, Pedro. And Cheryl.
Good morning, everyone. Just jumping in. Thank you. I've been coming since before Katrina for just a little bit. And in this time during COVID, I got to join you all with Zoom. Very nice to be here with you all. Living in New Orleans.
Okay, thank you. All right, now I'm going to go on to explain the format of the meeting. Let me just say that everyone should have themselves on mute unless you're speaking. Down at the bottom of the screen or on the side, depending on your device, there is a mute button that looks like a microphone. There is a stop video button that looks like a camera. There is a participants icon that shows who's in the meeting. You can also change your screen name there if you'd like to. There is also a little balloon thing that looks like a chat where you can post comments. And that's it for that. And there's also a big red leave meeting button, either at the bottom or on the side. Okay, the format of the meeting is that we keep a list and people are called in order that they are on the list by myself, the facilitator. You raise one finger to get on the list, wave it around, make sure people can see it. And please, we speak in order of the list and limit your comments to approximately 2 minutes. When we show respect for the speaker, no side comments, no personal attacks, no name calling. The point of the discussion is to listen, learn, and not argue. We have clarifying questions, which you can raise 2 fingers for a clarifying question. Wave it around so the facilitator can see it. The clarifying question consists of, I did not understand what you meant, or could you please further explain what you meant by? It is not to give your opinion. If you want to give your opinion on something the speaker said, or to challenge something the speaker said, put yourself on the list. Okay. All right, we move on to why I brought the topic. I brought the topic because I was listening probably to WWOL, which I do most days at work. And somewhere I heard the discussion about the Respect of Marriage Act. Okay, and the controversy seems to be over same-sex marriage and interracial marriage. Both, and it's primarily what's his name that I don't like. I can't think of his name.
Clarence Thomas.
Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas is kind of involved in this, which it would affect interracial marriage, which he is a part of interracial marriage. So I don't understand why he's doing this. Okay. But I really feel that, first of all, the Dobbs Act, which was the one that repealed national protections for abortion rights, when conservatives on the one hand speak about how the government should not be in your business, but it's okay for the government to be in your business on this issue. Once again, the government should not be in your business, but the government is in your business on this issue of same-sex marriage or interracial marriage. So anyway, I just thought it was, worth discussing and bringing to Erace for discussion. So the list is open. I mean, that's why I brought it, and the list is open. So, Phyllis.
You ready for me to start?
I am, and Teresa.
Well, I just want to add to Clarence Thomas's ridiculousness that when this bill went to the Senate, Mitch McConnell voted against it, and he is also in a biracial marriage, interracial marriage, and I don't know if they just think it won't affect them, or if they're so hateful about gay
Beatrice.
people that they will vote against their own marriages to stop, allegedly stop those marriages from happening. And yeah, I don't know why people get so worked up about what other people do in their private lives. It doesn't affect or hurt them. It doesn't make any sense to me. And love is love.
Right. Thank you, Phyllis.
Greer is waiting to be let in.
Phyllis, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Oh, she was in and she jumped off the screen, so she should try to get in again because there's nobody in the waiting room.
Okay. All right. Teresa.
This whole argument just kind of reminds me of the fact that our country was founded for and by Protestant rich white guys. And, you know, when I look at the attacks on rights, it's always something that's not generally going to affect them. Although it is funny that Mitch McConnell and Clarence Thomas would actually be affected by this particular one. So when you talk about, well, how can they do this? How can they do that? I really go back to just that, and just also what I read about evangelicals. You know, they want the rules to be strict for everybody else, but not to restrict them. Government can, you know, stay out of my life, but you want government all up in my reproduction. you know, and it's kind of a similar vein. When I was a public school teacher, parents were all for being strict on punishing other people's children, but never their own. It was always this thing about, you know, I almost felt like parents really wanted me to unconditionally love their children. It's like, I'm your child's math teacher. I'm not doing that. I'm teaching them math and the pathway for that, this whole unconditional love. And then no one ever said that, but it really is, okay, we want all these restrictions to control other people, but I myself should not be controlled. And that's what I hear in these types of arguments among the politicians. So
Good point, Teresa. Good point. Beatrice.
Just glad that our legislators have seen the need to codify something that needs to have been preserved, especially with the danger, as Clarence Thomas threatened, that these rights might be overturned, as happened with Dobbs. It is not my business to determine whether same gender loving people can love each other, be together, marry, have family. That's not my business to determine that. That's out of the scope of what I need to do. And I think there's so little genuine love in our world, in our society, in wherever in our spaces, that to try to harm people, separate people, legislate against people, the whole the foolishness around, and I say foolishness, the LGBT issues around gender affirming care, around participating in sports, all of these things are hurting people, and they're hurting people in ways that are very serious. Young children, the suicide rate is greater among transgender children than certainly anybody on a court competing with someone. It's just, I'm glad that this is going to be codified. And I think we need to be supportive of families and people, same gender, otherwise, that are loving one another and making a good world for the children that they are raising and the communities in which they are. And I am happy about this and joyful about it. And I'm just weary. I really am weary of people who are trying to get all up in somebody else's business. Just stay out of people's bedrooms, stay out of who they love. Just go do what you're gonna do. Just go sit down and be quiet.
Absolutely. Stanton?
Yeah, while I'm appreciative of this federal law getting passed by the legislature and signed by the president, it still kind of freaks me out that we're living in this, what I remember as a child, states' rights era. And this whole notion of states' rights in the modern century we live in is just so disconcerting to me, that you can have rights on one side of a border of the state and then you cross over and you lose your rights. If you want to get married in a state that does not recognize gay marriage, you can't get married. You have to go to another state to get married. It's the same concept with the abortion ruling. It's just, the world, in many areas of the world, like Europe, is trying to have this, European Union, although the Brits didn't appreciate it, I guess. But in any regard, we're the United States. We're not 50 separate entities, and these disparities in laws between state to state is just sort of mind-numbing to me. And I would like to see something that would have a constitutional basis to it, not just a legislative basis. So that's my opinion.
Yes, thank you, Stanton. Okay, Jean?
I'm sorry, I'm very slow. Well, my one concern, though, is the fact
Teresa.
that organizations, religious organizations, and members of those organizations can discriminate against anyone. They are not required to provide services, accommodations, advantages, facilities, goods, or privileges. I think this is why this passed. Part of it is one of the senator's son came out while this was pending. The other part is this allows anybody to continue. Remember the LGBT, gay couple that was getting married, and the baker refused to do their wedding cake. And this allows that discrimination to continue. So not only are we recognizing and requiring all states to recognize gay marriages as well as interracial, which we've got the Loving case. I mean, that was, I think in the 60s, that the Loving case said that the couple in Virginia, they had to leave Virginia and move to the district because it was interracial marriage was outlawed in Virginia. But this allows, we are legislating discrimination as well as allowing or requiring states to recognize marriages. So I don't know what we do about that, but that's got to go away.
All right. Thank you, Jean. Teresa?
Okay, so one first point, somebody said something, how can we safeguard rights? I am really optimistic that when Biden gets the primaries, the first primary switch to South Carolina and Michigan, two states that have more a demographic more similar to what it is in the United States, I believe we're going to get some candidates. That's my optimism, because it just really, I mean, you can tell I'm the type of person who curses at the TV, the things that I hear. And the last time when this white woman in Iowa says, I feel diversity in my heart. Ooh, I just went off, because I said that must be the new I don't see color among racist white people who think that they're nice and not racist. Secondly, talking about Loving versus the state of Virginia, at least in the movie, when they asked Mr. Loving, why'd you have to marry her? Because it's just like, yeah, you can have your black mistress, you can have your black hoe, but you're going to make her a wife. You're going to elevate her socially to this thing that something that we're going to not really have to respect, but she is now a respectable woman in your life. Again, that goes back to this country was formed by rich, straight, Protestant white men. You know, the laws at least were enacted. So, you know, they had their slave mistress. You surely wouldn't have married her. Why would you have a law to do that? You just take that, right? She's already your property. You do that, and that mentality still exists. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
No, thank you. The list is open. Phyllis?
Well, I want to say, I think that it's somewhat ironic that this law is getting passed as a reaction to the overturning of Roe. It's almost like they won one thing and they were losing this other thing because it woke people up. I wish the Democrats had woken up a long time ago about Roe, because they had other options where they could, in many, many years, where they could have gotten it more solidly protected, and they failed to do so because they didn't think it would ever go away. And those new justices on the court straight up lied about what they thought about it being settled law. They perjured themselves, in my opinion, and should be, you know, whatever can be done to them should be done to them. And I also think that there's like for the people who are against gay marriage, which I think we should just call marriage and not put a label on it like that. It threatens the patriarchy, the patriarchal power structure. Because, you know, I know when I was much younger, the idea of a gay couple had to do with, well, who's the man and who's the woman? And I don't hear that kind of language anymore from people who know better. But it was like the idea that they couldn't imagine a relationship where there would be people with more equality with each other. And there are also heterosexual couples that have more equality in their relationship than back in the day. So I just think the patriarchy is running scared and, you know, are so worked up about it that they're even, as I said earlier, willing to jeopardize their own interracial marriages to try to protect the patriarchy. Thanks.
Thank you. Marion?
I keep hearing the words of Lin-Manuel Miranda, love is love is love is love. This love situation is between two human beings. It's not a human being and a kangaroo or a human being and a giraffe. It's two human beings. And as that old song says, what the world needs now is love, sweet love. That's what we need. And if two human beings can find a way to each other and love one another, so be it. Everybody else needs to mind their cotton picking business, leave the people alone, let them love one another, let them be together, and mind your own cotton picking business. It's two human beings that love one another. And I say, good for them. So he's narrow-minded, tight nose, tight rear ends, need to shut up, go off somewhere, sit in the corner, and keep your cotton picking mouth closed, and let these people love one another. That's how I feel about it.
Okay, Teresa. Thank you, Marion. Teresa?
Oh, I didn't know I was like next. I thought you were just saying
Yes,
my
you're
name to put me on
next.
the list. Another thing I'm thinking of is with interracial marriage, this doesn't produce a white baby. Remember that was when Roe v. Wade was overturned. It's like, oh, now we've protected white life. And, she came back later. I forget her name. I don't even want to remember it, and said, "Oh, I meant to say the right to life." It's like, no, you didn't, you racist woman. You said the racist part out loud because you were standing right beside Trump, and, that bubble that he kind of produces when, I guess, right beside you think, oh, that's not going to come back and bite me in the ass later. But maybe it did. I don't know. Maybe it boosted her in her circles. But you're also looking at there's always a group of people who want abortion to be illegal because supposedly white people are going extinct, which they are not, but that's always a nice little button to keep pushing and keep the fear and anger going, because it's not a intellectual or academic argument, it is an emotional one. So every now and again, they keep bringing that one back. I haven't heard it yet about, well, two gay people can't reproduce. Well, they can definitely adopt. And there have been, I found out much later in life that one of my uncles who was married actually was gay. And that's the way he had several children, was to be married. But still, that's neither here nor there. That's how they did it back in the day. But, there are a lot of reproductive options for someone who is gay, and that has really no bearing. But again, back in the day, it's like, well, you're gay, you shouldn't be a parent or reproduce or whatever. But it is possible. And I know people who are parents who are gay. So again, attitudes are changing or whatever. So I haven't heard that argument again about, okay, this is not going to produce white children if you have an interracial or gay couple. But that was also kind of in the back of my mind too.
All right, thank you, Teresa. Jean.
Two of the couples on my street too, the gay, two women, we have several gay couples on my street. And two of them, they went to a sperm bank, the women did. And that is how one of them, the sperm was implanted in one of the partners. And so she delivered the baby. And then one couple, they have traced other siblings, and they have gotten together because all these children have the same father. So talk about spreading love. They're spreading a lot of love amongst themselves. And I still go back to the point about the fact that we are legislating discrimination, saying it's okay to discriminate against gay. This would also apply to interracial couples as well. That someone could say, no, I'm not gonna rent to you. I'm not going to bake your cake. I'm still perturbed about that. So thank you.
Phyllis. All right, thank you, Jean. Phyllis?
I was just looking back at the stuff I underlined when I read this, and
Pedro.
when
and
there was
Beatrice.
the quote from Clarence Thomas, or sorry, it's from Alito, that said that the 2015 same-sex marriage ruling would have ruinous consequences for religious liberty. I wrote, F that noise. I'm just so over them saying religious liberty when what they really mean is religious fascism. And they're not interested in everybody having religious liberty. They want their religion to be everybody's, how everybody has to live. And then I'm super annoyed by like Republicans who vote one way and have really strong stances, like Rob Portman in Ohio, until it affects their lives in terms of like, oh, his son came out, and then he's like, oh, maybe I need to rethink this. It's like they have no ability to put themselves in other people's shoes. They have no empathy. They have no compassion until they have experienced it themselves. and they realize, oh, I don't want my child being discriminated against or being, in danger or in any harm, but they didn't care about anybody else's children or the lives of anybody else until it affected them. And, similar to like Nancy Reagan being against stem cell treatments until Ronnie got sick. And, it's, and there are so many examples of this. And I think really what motivates these people? It's stunning to me. So, and I just let Greer in again, Marva, and she just not on the screen. So I don't know what's going on.
Okay. Next, we have Pedro.
Yeah, I got a lot of kind of reflections listening to everyone speak as always, which is what I love about our meetings and such. But what it kind of occurs to me are a number of things. I really like what Phyllis said. A couple of things. Love is love, and empathy. I mean, if you want to, everyone appreciates MLK, but nobody appreciates his most revolutionary ideas of empathy, of being able to put yourself in the shoes of the other side, whether it's a foreign policy issue or whether it's a personal issue or whatever. And this concept of, I'm sure you're aware of it, of liberation theology, where there is the fusing of morals with social justice and the respect for all people, and the idea that the sanctity of a human being. That was really MLK's. Love was the center of, I think, his rotation or whatever. But also, I wanted to mention, I might need to get back on, but systemic racism and structural inequality drive cultural norms. And so we see this in the subjects that we're talking about. And I think that there's not a distinction about the different forms of violence, that there's emotional violence and the high rates of suicide and those things of self-esteem getting shattered that that the LGBTQ people disproportionately shoulder as a population is a crime. And it's this whole lawfare thing of having the power to manipulate laws in a way that promote, your own very narrow a view of things and such. That's all I wanted to say for me.
All right, thank you, Pedro. Beatrice?
And the article initially raises the question, what makes it different this time? Why is it different this time in terms of people's support for the Respect for Marriage Act? And of course, it is Clarence Thomas's threatening when Dobbs went through. But also, I think that more people, 70% in terms of Gallup polls are in support of same-gender marriages. But I think more people, to some degree, to Phyllis's point, people are in touch with more people who are involved in same-gender marriages, same-gender loving. And I think it makes a difference because we are a pretty individualistic society. I mean, in terms of if it affects me, then it's an issue. If it somebody else, it's not. But the closer home, for example, Mitt Romney said he would vote for the Respect for Marriage Act if it did include the issue of religious liberty. So that was where that touched him. Unfortunately, we do not work for the common good. If it's not going to make things better for me and mine, then especially if it deals with gender, if it deals with race, then I'm not in favor. I'm not in favor of it. And I think that is an unfortunate way. We are, the whole issue of getting vaccines and it comes down to me and mine and my personal decision. and it's my body, my choice, that kind of thing. There's a lot that needs to be healed in this country, and it has to do with the initial founding that Teresa has spoken about, that this is, if you look at the Constitution, nobody was talking about women, they weren't talking about enslaved people. Our foundation is systemically exclusionary and racist. And unless we start at the healing of that in some way, work at the changing of that, we are going to continue to we'll make little progress. Jean has affirmed that there's a lot that's not in this respect for marriage. We'll make little progress. But if you think about the suppression of the vote, everything that's happened here in Georgia, we're kind of moving a little bit forward, but because our structure is systemically and structurally racist and exclusionary, we will continue to slip back, and we've got to hold on tight and keep moving forward. I'm done.
All right, thank you. Stanton?
Yeah, to just sort of tag along with what Beatrice was just saying, that, yeah, we got to be on our guard, because gay sentiment is definitely on the rise on the Twitter sphere, and there's a lot of hostility that's backlash to some of what's happening as far as the progress that is being made. There are people who just can't handle it, and their response is a very unpleasant one. That's a big concern of mine, that there is this element, this definitely hardcore fringe element in this country that just cannot handle seeing the progress and the change that's happening, and they are lashing out. And I mean, the nightclub was just one incident, but apparently there's lots of ugly incidents happening every day that we don't hear about, but that get reported. And, you know, it's just an unpleasant situation. People have such a attitude towards progress. Thanks.
Thank you. Oh, excuse me. The list, Phyllis, okay.
Yeah, I wanted to, sorry, I'm trying to text with Greer too. It was interesting to me when I found out that the LDS Church had supported the Respect for Marriage Act, and Mitt Romney voted for it, but Mike Lee of Utah voted against it. I thought that was an interesting, and I have a friend who is LDS, and she posts really interesting kind of articles. And one thing about the LDS Church is that they believe in ongoing revelation. So they, unlike most Christian churches, are more likely to change their stance. I mean, it might take a long time, but if their prophet, I'm trying to think if that's the right term, the person who's the head of the church passes down a revelation, that becomes the new belief. And there is a lot of speaking out in the LDS Church for acceptance of gay and lesbian people in their community. So I know a lot of people have a lot of bad feelings about the LDS, but I think they're, you know, looking into their theology, there's interesting things to gain from them that other Christian churches could participate in. Thanks.
Thank you. Pedro?
It's fun, man. You just put your finger up and you're on the air here. Hey, you know, there was this movie, I have it somewhere, a DVD. I'd like to share it sometime, but it's with Sigourney Weaver is a very right-wing mother, and they try to change her son's sexual orientation. It ultimately leads to terrible, terrible consequences, but she does change, and she changes because it's her son, and she has this adoring love for her son, and she finally realizes that she betrayed her son, and it's a really heart-wrenching kind of deal. But the fact is that everybody loves other people in an incredibly deep way when they're family members and such, right? And if their son or daughter came out, I believe at the end of the day, 95% or more would support it, or would love their son or daughter, not a iota less type of thing. And then to lose someone like that is the most unconscionable feeling state, or whatever and such. So, therein lies, the getting back to what Phyllis said about empathy. If we can get people to empathize that it's their son or daughter or their brother or sister or the one that they care about the most in the world other than themselves, hopefully, is the one that's being affected, then that's what starts to shake this indoctrinated, pernicious alienation from our spirit that occurs for so many people that could really deny other people basic rights of love. Thanks.
Thank you, Pedro. The list is open. Cheryl. You have to, there you go.
Sorry, I'm not doing very good with all of this. That is such an interesting statement that got me to comment that Pedro said, having terrible racist rednecks in my family. I don't know if everybody knows, but I'm from the Central Valley of California, and my parents moved to San Jose, which was a blessing for me. And then a good gay friend said that I was working with said, there's a place for a person like you. It's called New Orleans, Louisiana. That was a very long time ago. And I've gone back and forth and spent a lot of time in many different places. But having this redneck family is like such an incredible education. I thank my parents all the time for letting us move from there so that I don't know, I might have turned out like them. I don't know. My mother and father were very adamant. So was my grandmother. I had a grandmother that was a horrid racist that unfortunately had a dream after she died that she came back and she apologized to me for her hatred. She hated me because I lived in San Jose, because we were not part of the family. So it has been interesting to watch this family disregard and hate each other over these issues. And I want to tell you, this sounds terrible maybe of me, but I'm noting that we have certain people that aren't even here today for this conversation. And I am super happy about that because I'm very glad to be speaking with all of you. And I guess that's really what I have to blow out is in myself, there are still problems. You guys can hear them sometimes. I try to expose myself so that y'all can correct me if I am out of line, because this will be an ongoing learning lesson for me for the rest of my life. I have cousins that I have tried to talk to, and you know what they said? We thought you liked being the black sheep. I mean, listen to that stuff, right? So, my heart just is very happy to be with all of you this morning. And I'm certainly glad that we didn't have to go through this and it didn't pass.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you so much. And your observations. Stanton.
Cheryl, I just wanted to thank you for saying what I was thinking. That's on the money. Thanks.
Teresa.
Okay. Talking about black sheep of the family, I have often joked about being the white sheep of the family. And I've said that comment in front of white people who have corrected me and said, oh, it's black sheep. I said, not in my family. We're all black, which isn't true. But, it was enough to the point where I was just like, you're not going to correct my expression. I meant exactly what I said and how I wanted to say it. and when you talk about semantics, so you do get into, and Cheryl, I do appreciate your comments, but it's just like you meet racism where it's at. And just like me saying, and I always say, oh yeah, I'm so different from the rest of even my sisters in my immediate family. And I always say I'm the white sheep of the family. And I dare anybody to correct me on my phraseology. And I've had to make that point more than once. And it's just like, no, we're all Black in my family. So that wouldn't make any difference for me to say I'm the Black sheep of the family. I'm the white sheep of the family. And that's how, but again, I don't try to at this point preach to people about, well, you're wrong, you're this, that. I defend my position. And in that defense of my position, it's like you can change your mind or not, but you're not going to correct what I just said because I expressed myself the way I wanted to. So there you go. But you reminded me of that with the Black sheep of the family comment.
Thank you, Teresa. Phyllis.
Yeah, I want to add to what Cheryl and Stanton said because I was delighted to see this topic chosen, but thinking about certain people's attendance and their previous comments and their previous disrespect for other members, I had kind of a sick feeling in my stomach. And, I actually, Stanton, I think you're brave to come today because you didn't know they wouldn't be here. And, I have worried about the redness that your face takes on sometimes when they're talking. So I think that's why the last board meeting, we added some language. We made some decisions that facilitators will call point of order if there is any sort of belittling of people or disrespecting in the way they present their opinions. They can have their opinions, but they can't belittle other people. And also what exhausts me is the arrogance and the unwillingness to be open and learn. I mean, I'm totally open to the things that I, as a white person, especially a white woman, have possibly unknowingly put on people of color. And I'm really sad, and more than sad, angered when cishet people won't take that same stance towards the LGBTQ community. And the multiple going to people's sacred safe space and killing them is horrifying. And by that I mean clubs and bars, not talking about a gay church. So yeah, those are supposed to be safe spaces and they get killed in them. So thanks.
Thank you, Phyllis. Next we have Beatrice.
I just want to briefly speak about what is called proof texting, and which is what a lot of churches will use to diminish, demonize people, same gender loving couples, transgender, whatever, what does not seem binary. And a lot of sacred texts really need to be read in the context of when they were written, what people were you talking about, were they nomadic, was it important that they reproduce? Take the context, who was the audience for what you're reading, but a lot of our churches do not do that. And this is how, unfortunately, a lot of African-American people with AIDS, people with different conditions are just diminished because their religious groups put them out, do not consider them because of what they believe the sacred text has told them, without reading with understanding, without reading with who was the audience, when was it written, what was the context in which it was written, and why are you going to choose this little bit of information to damn an entire population when you're supposed to worship someone who is love. God is love. So when you are using your sacred text to diminish, demonize, destroy a whole group because of who they love, then this is wrong. And it is unfortunate that people cannot move from that place. And so consequently, our area, Atlanta, has a large population of African Americans with AIDS. Not a lot of cities do, but I mean, it is unfortunate that our sacred texts, that our understanding of our religion has led us to not love to discriminate, to exclude, to kill, and to give reason for hating. There are 613, my understanding is, of Jewish rules, and people will choose one and decide that that's it. So we've got to be more careful. I'm glad I wish some people were here. Unfortunately, I know how you feel, Stanton, but we got to open our hearts and our ears and our minds. We just have to do better about loving people. Life is too hard for people to have to struggle to be loved. Gracious. That's it.
Thank you, Beatrice. We have Jean Stanton. Have you?
I just have a story. Well, it's not a live story. There's a man, Martin, and I'll just say Martin, and he's the one who discovered or created Sirius, that radio in the sky. Well, he transgendered to a woman. He's now Martine. He was married, and he is still married to the same woman. And they have 4 children. The oldest child had some incurable disease. So Martine went back to school, and she became or got a medical degree, and she started a company, and she has found a means of treating her oldest daughter, who's now working in the corporation as well. And they've been able to help many children. In fact, there's a football player they've teamed up with him. His daughter had it. It affects children, this disease does. So many of them usually don't live to be grown-ups. So it's the souls. It doesn't matter what your gender, it's your souls. And they're soulmates, they love each other, they have a loving family regardless of the gender. And I always think it's just such a fantastic story, a live story. She's here her corporation's here in Silver Spring. She also has her company that she built. The building is pollution free. I can't remember the words, but it's zero net impact on the environment. She's way beyond her time. Anyway, sorry, I just had to share that.
Oh, thank you, Jean. Thank you. Phyllis, and then Stanton, and then Cheryl.
First of all, thank you for that very uplifting sermon, Beatrice. That's the kind of sermon I like. Not the other kind that we get subjected to. I will say that reminded me that there is a documentary called 1946, The Mistranslation That Shifted Culture. And it's the website, the first thing at the top says, what if the word homosexual was never meant to be in the Bible? And my understanding is that it goes through when the evangelical Christian churches decided to mistranslate a word or a phrase and make it homosexual. And that is when that became part of the Bible. 1946, not 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 46, or 46, but 1946. And I'm not sure how it can be watched yet, but their website has a lot of information on it and about the topic, and I'm going to look through it, and that might be when I present on the 17th, that might be what I use. If I find out information about it, does say purchase tickets on this website, but I couldn't tell on the page that went to if that's something you can do right now. I think it was shown at a film festival. So it's called 1946. So just wanted to share that's going to be out there to upset a lot of people.
Okay. Thank you, Phyllis. Stanton?
Yeah, I too just wanted to thank Beatrice for her insights. Always very helpful and uplifting. I also want to bring up the concept of looking at LGBTQ rights from a world perspective. And I will tell you, I've been feeling a little hypocritical for the last week because I am watching some of the World Cup. And I feel like I shouldn't be watching it because of the policies in Qatar towards the LGBTQ community. And it's one of these things where if this was being played in some other part of the world, where if it would have been played in apartheid South Africa, would we have been participating? If it was some other part of the world where human rights were violated like they are in Qatar, would we be participating? I don't know, but it just, it's one of these things where, yes, it's a national issue, but it's a global issue. And there are countries in this world where you can be executed for being gay or lesbian. Yeah, that,
Teresa, go ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
Stanton, you know, the point that you raise is good, but then I'm wondering which country would this game be played that doesn't have human rights violation? And it's an unfair clarification, but do you have, I mean, you're a sports fan. Where could they possibly play this game that didn't have some problematic?
yeah, I mean, I would agree with that statement, Teresa. I would just say, I guess it's shades of gray. It's from problematic to really problematic. I don't know. Yeah, it's a valid question that you ask, but as a gay man, this one in particular comes, you know, close to home, and it just seems like they, as a country in particular, have some really bad problems when it comes to the LGBTQ community. So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I'm watching, so like I say, I feel a little hypocritical, but I agree. There's probably no place that is going to go without a absolute close examination of their human rights policies and not finding problematic issues. So, but yeah, it's just like I say, it's a global problem, and you know, we are handling it as a country a lot better than a lot of places, but not as well as others. So, yeah, that's it.
Thank
it's
you,
a
Stan.
it's a never-ending problem, is the bottom line.
Okay, Cheryl.
Another controversial place. I just wanted to mention to everyone that Tulane has a really very wonderful, in the Newcomb Gallery, they have a wonderful show right now, which it's a lot of people that are older that are transgendered. It's a book, I guess, that's been composed, and there's beautiful photographs and stories there, and it was really enriching. And I believe that you can go maybe on their website and even pick it up. I think they do that when they have shows there. It was really wonderful. I do want to thank Beatrice for her mouth. And I'd love Phyllis to possibly write that movie in the chat for us. I'd like to take note of that properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the list is open. And if everyone has said everything, okay, Teresa.
Yeah, I got another World Cup comment to make. I swear I'm not a sports fan, but I do like the fact that this is the first year I think the women are going to get paid the same as the men. So out of problematic things, I mean, the women's soccer team wins far more than the men's, and the justification for paying men more, other than blatant sexism, you know, they always got to hide that fact, is that, well, men generate more money. Yeah, they generate more money to lose. I mean, more money is poured into the men's games and the advertising and whatnot. So it's not a fair apples to apples comparison about how much money the men make. If you invested the same amount of money into the women's sports, then they probably would do more because they are a winning team. So I know that's not the same as LGBTQ rights, but I'm just saying it took years, a couple of years for the
Pedro.
women to finally get the equal money. Perhaps this will be something to jumpstart more equality in sports. So
All right,
maybe that will eventually be a silver lining.
Thank you, Teresa. Pedro?
Yeah, it seems like we're also, as a condition of the human deal, is it's hard to resist getting so
Phyllis?
solidified in our positions on issues, whether it's politics or whatever else. And I think of music as one of those deals. I went to this Roger Waters concert a month ago or so. It's really, really great. You know, you have people from all different political perspectives sitting in the same place and enjoying each other's company. And then when he presents these political themes, and he does a lot of it, it promotes discussion rather than shoots up barriers. And I think the same thing, Teresa, with the World Cup. I think sports has that potential of being a venue where everyone comes together and they're sitting in the stands or they're playing on the field and stand. That's where these discussions have to happen, and they're not going to happen unless you bring everybody together in the same place, you know, and sometimes being right is just not enough. I really appreciate so much Beatrice's statement. Life is just too hard for people to have to struggle to be loved. I think that's the greatest indictment of an alienating culture. So thank you for that. As always, Beatrice, I appreciate your comments and everyone else's. Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro. Phyllis?
A word that really stood out to me in this article was regressive. And I tend to think more of like, we need to be more progressive. We need to be open to change. And because that's just what life is. Life is change. Change is the only constant, as people have said. And I have felt that there are members of this group who sometimes attend who really would like to just put up barriers to any kind of change that makes them uncomfortable. And because of their, I would say, and I have tried to soften this before, but I'm not softening it anymore, homophobia, transphobia, that has been expressed. And I think we should remind them that they are regressing. They are regressive in their beliefs. Like I said earlier, they're not open to learning new things. You can do some reading. You can, expand your mind, expand your horizons, expand your understanding. I don't understand people who don't want to do that. I love learning that something new about the world that I didn't know before. And I think the only way we're going to all survive is through embracing diversity, because that's how nature is built. And if we don't, we will perish. Thanks.
Thank you. The list is open. Okay. Then we can move on to the wrap up. It's 11:03. It's a little early, but that this will ensure that we end at 11:30. People who haven't spoken are Francie and Greer. So Francie, if you want to make your final comments, you can take your full 2 minutes.
I've enjoyed listening, and I always learn something. I know that sounds trite, but I really don't have much to add. We have to, I think if we didn't have all these problems among us, we wouldn't have any reason to have wars. And I think this is all fundamental to what causes wars. So I would like to see us all open our hearts more. That's all I have to say.
Absolutely. Thank you, Francie. Greer?
Okay, the LBGT, I think it's IA, I can't remember precisely. I'm gonna say people with different different lifestyles have been around since the beginning of time. But some people have had the benefit of being able, especially those who are white, who have been able to have their white privilege and at the same time had the ability to hide what they are or how they express themselves sexually. Whether it's right or wrong, that's not for me to say. I'm for all people having all the rights that a human being has to have and should have. But I'm going to say this. Being African American in this country and having an agenda set up against my people, since the first person who had the audacity to want to be free was made a slave for the rest of their life, thus starting the slave trade in America. If we had our rights, which were there were things legislated against us by the government, by the law, and things are still going on today. If we had our rights, then everybody else's rights would fall into place. And that's the thing. African Americans don't have their rights. Their full rights as citizens in this country to be respected. We're not asking to be loved, but we should get every benefit of being a citizen here without restriction, without racism. Until that happens, everybody's going to have to fight for what they want. Because if our rights are messed, then everybody else's rights fall into place. And I'm gonna leave it at that.
All right, thank you. Marva?
I want to make um I want to make one and only statement. I have close friends that happen to be a gay couple. There are Black males. They stopped coming to Erace because they opened up a new business, which is a restaurant and boutique. They are doing well, quite well with their new business. I greatly respect and admire and love them. They are great community activists. I don't know what their future plans are, but they would make great parents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marva. Next, we move on to our 1 minute wrap up. And we'll start with Marion.
First of all, let me thank you, Nancy, for bringing this very necessary and timely topic for discussion. I really appreciated it. I too wish there were more people here who would have other views, but still in all, I still wish that they were here. As a person who has more years behind her than in front of her, I made a decision long ago that I was going to treat my fellow human beings as I wish to be treated. I am not going to be judgmental. I am not going to be critical. I am going to accept you for who you are. I'm going to respect you. And I will, as I said just a couple of seconds ago, I'm not going to judge. So I want to thank Nancy for this topic. And I'm hoping that everyone that's in attendance today will adopt this attitude of empathy and understanding, and understand that, as you all have heard me say before, we are all mortal, we're all flawed, we're all human beings, and we have to, it is mandatory, I believe, we have to accept one another as human beings, as our fellow human beings, not to be judged, but to be empathized with and to be respected. Thanks again, Nancy, for this great topic.
Oh, you're welcome, Marion. Thank you. Phyllis?
I'm glad that we got to discuss this in relative calm without blood pressures being raised and wanting to reach through the screen. I saw a sweatshirt for sale that says, "Pray for me, I'm petty." And I was like, oh no, I'm not really petty, but I'm tempted to email the link of this conversation to the 3 people who aren't here and say, sorry you couldn't join us, we missed you. And I'm like, yep, I'm petty. Confess it.
Thank you. Stanton?
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on something that Greer said. I hope that what you say would be true, that if African Americans' rights fell into line, everybody's rights would fall into line. I just don't know that I even believe that to be true, because there are other parts of the world with other histories of discrimination against various people of various kinds that were not necessarily based on the treatment of Black people in those countries, because they weren't there, for one thing. But I just don't know that everyone's rights fall into line if one group of people's rights are accomplished. I think that there's still prejudices and bigotry towards other types of people and other groups of people that have nothing to do with Black and white issues necessarily. They just have to do with human issues, where for some reason people have to dislike other people and have to find a scapegoat for their own purposes. Thanks.
Thank you, Stanton. Jean?
Sorry, it takes me a while. I just learned a couple days ago that there are 100 conflicts on this globe. I mean, we're the worst species on Earth, it seems. We've got to find people that we want to fight with, that we want to hate, that we don't want to accept as people or as our others. I mean, I thank you too, Nancy, for the topic. I just wish that we were in a place to be more hopeful about people loving one another and accepting and loving. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Pedro?
Yeah, a lot of stuff. One thing I do want to say is I am a little uncomfortable speaking about folks that are not here. I think what we need to all be doing more of, or I'll just say for myself, it's a very difficult task, but separating ideas from personalities. I think of critical race theory as being so essential to everything that's been mentioned today. And critical sexual orientation theory is in the same vein, right? Of humanity. I think when we separate ideas from personality, we can deal with the ideas that need to be addressed, and it reduces the emotional angst. The emotional angst is my own perspective on what's being said and the way I think about it, as opposed to just looking at the ideas at what they are. Maybe they need to be brought more out of the closet when everyone is present to have these types of discussions, because I think everybody honestly believes and speaks from their heart, and some of that is based on ignorance of certain very important things, and that's what discourse is all about, is trying to bring those things to my realization so I can consider them. And I think, as Marion said, we are all flawed. And so we really need the eyes of others, that kind of Johari window deal. Some things about me I just can't see. And anyhow, thank you for the discussion in the article, Nancy,
Oh, you're welcome.
and
Thank you.
everybody.
Teresa.
Yes, thank you for the discussion. I really appreciate it as usual. I don't know if this is the proper place to make a request, but I'm going to do it anyway because I haven't heard, and I'd rather say I'm sorry than whatever. But I have been reading a book by Trisha Hersey, whatever her name is. It's called Rest is Resistance, and it talks about the origin of the grind culture that we find ourselves in, which is the marriage between the patriarchy and white supremacy. I know we're not a book club, but I was just my suggestion is, can we please read an article about the origins of grind culture in America, or the basis of capitalism? I think it's really interesting. I'll put the title of the book in the chat just for anybody who cares to read it. However, I know we're more of an article, short video group to discussion. I think it would be, I would really like everybody's opinion and discussion on that, but great discussion today. Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Cheryl?
I wanted to kind of comment once, I know maybe we're not supposed to be doing this. I hope it's okay. Stanton charged me with a little something about how it's a belief system that we're all going to that people dislike each other. There's kind of a lot of writings about that, about tribalism and how we do that as humans. And I really appreciate Pedro's kind words about not ostracizing each other and learning from each other, and how well he put that. I have to refer again back to my family, and it seems that evolving to love over preference for holding on to things. As a massage therapist, I do recognize that people have patterns, and I have them myself, where angst can be one of them, where we just get used to having like a thorn in our foot. And if the thorn goes away, we wonder where the thorn went. It is another human nature thing that I have noticed. So I myself believe that there was an evolution in my family towards love, and I got to be a part of that. And I think and pray for my family every day that they will come to a more peaceful place, so that they don't feel hatred in themselves, because I find that to be an uncomfortable when I have that in me. So I strive to evolve past that. That's how I look at that. And I wanted to speak to the book club. I would love to be in a club with you, Teresa, reading a book. And I know that Nora also has a book club that she has mentioned, and they read conscientious books. So possibly we could do something around that, with really great books that we could discuss, because maybe everybody here at the Holy Racism meeting wouldn't want to be in a book club, but maybe some of us would like to have, a side thing. And I would be interested in that.
Yeah, that's a good idea, I think. Thank you, Cheryl. Okay, thank you. Beatrice.
Hi, excuse me for my video being frozen. I don't know why that happens. Sometimes that's my daughter and me, and it tells me to choose another video setting, and then I'm sure I'll erase myself for the rest of my life. But anyway, thank you for the conversation. Thank you for the article. And it's just such a pleasure to be with all of you. Our Atlanta meeting is next Saturday, so I won't be here. And then we don't meet next Saturday. And before we know, it'll be the new year. So I'm wishing everybody a blessed, peaceful, and loving holiday season. Stay healthy and know that you are valuable and loved.
Thank you, Beatrice. That's beautiful.
Can I just say we
Okay.
are meeting the next 2 Saturdays?
Yeah. But I won't be here the next 2 Saturdays, and then after that, the next 2 Saturdays, we're not meeting. And so I will wish all of you a wonderful holiday as well. But I do have a few points that I wanted to bring up as my final comments. Cheryl mentioned, like Anne Teresa being on, the sheep of their families. Okay. And I'm reading this book. It's called, I forget who it's by. Oh, geez. I can't remember the man's name. It's called Rules of Estrangement. And it's about families, estrangement between family members. And the number one thing, well, there are 2 things actually that cause estrangement, particularly between parents and children, is 1, sexual orientation and differences in ideologies. Okay. So if you're, looking, and he does talk about, who is responsible for trying to bring, or who should be responsible about differences between generations, about how they think about things, how they view things. A lot of times, estrangements occur because of societal values and that between generations. A lot of that happens. What it was acceptable in one generation is not acceptable in another one, and vice versa. So that's something to think about too when you're talking about people, where their backgrounds come, how they think, which is one of the reasons that we come together and discuss our ideas, is to learn where our differences come from and why we think and believe differences, and to have acceptance. And I hate the word tolerance, but to have acceptance and tolerance of other people's perspectives. Okay. The other thing, contradiction, I wrote down. Okay. I like the way that Beatrice used the term sacred text, our sacred text, and how our sacred text is, and religion to me in general, is so contradictory in a lot of ways. I see that a lot, in that we're supposed to, there's supposed to be love and acceptance in religion, but there isn't. Only certain people are worthy or elevated to have that love and respect. If you don't fit this certain really narrow definition of what is acceptable, then you're out. You're not worthy. And not everybody fits into that mold. There are so many, differences amongst people. I mean, from physical characteristics to behavioral characteristics to just all kinds of things that make us individuals, and everybody should be accepted. So I have kind of an issue with that, always have. It's only been recently that the clarification has come to me why I have an issue with it. It is because of the contradictions. You say one thing, but you do something else. And that is very hard for me to accept. Okay, there's a lack of congruity there. I have to, parenting. I work at a real estate company, and when I first went to work there, there was the managing broker who was in a same-sex relationship, and they had a son. And how they did this is, it is their biological child. They are great parents, fantastic parents. This child is so well adjusted. They do so much with him and for him. It just puts, they are above and beyond what it means to be a parent. But how they did this is, one partner was the sperm donor, and the other partner's sister provided the egg and was the carrier. And so this is their biological child. And he is the best kid. I mean, he's a straight A student, he's an athlete. They do everything with him. I mean, fortunately, financially, they can afford to send him to private school and take him on trips around the country and so forth. You know, done more traveling than I've done in my 60 plus years. I think he's 14 now. But parenting, this was a couple that really wanted to be parents. And that's what it should be. You really want to be a parent and give it your all. On the idea of a book club, I think that's a good idea. We could read books. We used to do movies a long time ago. We used to have our Sunday afternoon movie, but we could still, individually watch movies that we could stream on Netflix or Hulu or things like that, and discuss it or be part of a discussion. I think that's very good. It would be very healthy for us to do so. But anyway, we can move on now to announcements. And